Hello? Working. I would wait a minute or two still. There's only 6 people who logged on, but um, this is like it's kind of a pain.
Like I wish every day Tina would come on and just be like,
We'll have to start in a minute.
let's
Hold
watch
on one
this
second.
after. I know. So the first time I put it down, I gotta ask Nick. Just get up on loudspeaker. Yes.
It's about half this membership.
For you can't really do a roll call from any phone.
Shouldn't. I'm just gonna start and see if I can just get on to live stream and start it. Yeah, no, I'm recording.
No, it's supposed to be recorded, but
I don't know, there's 18 people, and they can always rewind. So, probably good to go.
alright.
Give it up for Mr. Callahan!
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're on page 63, and we're reading Rules of Language. The problem was dinner. When Mom got home, it was 6:40, and no one had eaten. Their mother was usually the one who made dinner, so their father said they would wait for her. That was a mistake. Bird knew it was a mistake. She could predict an argument a mile away. Nothing could be done about it, though. Bird didn't know how to cook, so it's not like she could prepare a meal for them. Instead, she did the next best thing. She ate a turkey sandwich. That way, Mom wouldn't have to worry about including her. She suggested that the others eat sandwiches too, but they said no. They wanted to wait for something good. So Bird went into her room and waited too, but not for something good. The rules of language were different from kids than adults. Bird learned this early on. For example, neither Bird nor her brothers were allowed to curse, certainly not in front of their parents. Not even safe swears weren't super bad like HE double hockey sticks. If they said something uncouth, as Mother would say, their father would blurt out, "language," as a reminder that they were using bad words. No such rules applied to Mr. and Mrs. Thomas. They were allowed to use all the words. They could even pair some of the words together, like when Mr. Thomas called Mrs. Thomas a stupid expletive cow, or when she called him a moronic expletive. Every ugly word was on the table, especially when they spoke to each other. Bird listened to them now, with ear pressed against the door. She didn't want to, but she couldn't help it. There was little reason for her to put her ear there, though. They were yelling so that she could have been standing out in the driveway and heard everything. But at least she was doing something. Tammy called Mike a stupid Neanderthal idiot. Mike was calling Tammy a nagging pain in the expletive. Tammy said she shouldn't have to work all day and come home to cook dinner when Mike had two perfectly good arms and legs. Mike said it was her fault. She was the one who refused to clean up the expletive house and wanted to get a job so she could feel like Glory Expletive Steinman. To which Tammy replied, "It's Gloria Steinem, you expletive. And the very fact that you expect me to make you dinner after I've worked harder and longer than you is disgusting." "Of course I expected dinner," said Mike. "You're clearly not doing much else in this house, and you've made dinner for the past 15 years. And that's exactly the problem. And if you didn't want to make dinner, all you had to do was say, 'Mike, I'm too tired to make dinner.'" At this point, Mike did his pretend Tammy voice, which wasn't flattering at all. "You didn't have to explode in front of the expletive kids. Oh, so now I'm a bad parent." At some point, their arguments, if they went on long enough, one would accuse the other of being a bad parent. That's when the fights, or disagreements as their parents called them, would get really ugly. They never hit each other. Instead, they knocked things around the house. He might throw her book across the room, and she might kick the kitchen chair until it broke, for example. Bird wasn't in the mood for broken chairs and tossed books. Cash and Fitch had disappeared into their rooms back when the argument was a slow simmer, and she couldn't blame them. She would have done the same thing if she hadn't already been in hers. Once their kids were out of sight, Mr. and Mrs. Thomas morphed into their own separate machine, one that shot sparks and burned skin. Someone needed to stick a screwdriver in the spokes. Bird took a deep breath and turned the knob, but someone else beat her to it. Fitch. His door flew open with such force that it shook hers. "Why did you even get married?" he yelled. Bird's heart stopped beating. The refrigerator door swung open and slammed shut. All the jars rattled. Fitch went back to his room. Slam! 1 second later, he turned up his radio. The volume went up, 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 Walking on the Moon by the Police. Bird sat down, right where she was standing, still facing her door. She wondered what her parents were doing. She couldn't hear them anymore. All she heard was the music. My feet don't hardly make no sound, walking on the moon. Walking on the moon. Tomorrow. Cash kept his dreams about his arm. He dreamed that he was a rock climber. He dreamed that he played the drums. He dreamed that he shot hoops. In his dreams, he did all of this with one hand. One Sunday night, when the house was still quiet, he woke up thinking he was on the court with the Sixers and the Rockets, but he was just in his bed with his aching arm. It itched, and he had used the wire hanger to reach inside the cast and scratch. He didn't want to do anything but lie around. He hadn't left the house all weekend. He'd even missed school again Friday, and Fitch had forgotten to pick up some of his assignments. It didn't matter, though. He was already way behind, and now he'd probably flunk all over again. When he thought about being a grade behind his two younger siblings, it made a knot in his stomach that got tighter and tighter until he didn't want to move. Tomorrow, he'd have to go back to school. There was no way around it. Dr. J was poised to take a shot from the poster on the door. The Sixers had lost to Houston on Saturday night by 15 points. It was disappointing, but you win some, you lose some. That's what Cash's dad always said. He only said it when something was being lost. Cash had all Monday planned out in his head. What did Mrs. Salonga call it? Best laid plans? Yes, that was it. He had his best laid plans. They all centered around Penny. It went like this. 1, get signatures on his cast. 2, get good signatures only. Brent and Kenny were solid, and his locker was near Rachel Hill, so he'd ask her too, and maybe some of her friends. He wanted a mix of boys and girls. 3, once the signatures were in place, take his seat in Mrs. Salonga's class, Al casual, and wait for Penny. 4, don't look too anxious. Act like this is another Monday. If he was lucky, Penny would notice the cast right away and ask what happened. In which case, 5, offer the marker to Penny and ask her to sign the cast. She's signing and noticing the popular names on this cast. That's when he would. 6, talk to her, like a real conversation. It was a good plan. Tomorrow, Dr. J, Cash said on the poster, you have my word. Hey, Henry. When Fitch was about 4 years old, he threw a tantrum in Toys R Us. Bird blinked up at their mother and said, he's fitching a pit. And that made everyone laugh, including him. They called him Fitch from that point on, just like they called Bernadette Bird, because she couldn't pronounce her own name when she was little. He and Bird were twins, and they named each other for better or worse, but Amanda kept calling him Henry. When he walked into Miss Salonga's class on Monday morning, hey, Henry. When Mrs. Salonga told them to open their science book on page 120, what page did she say, Henry? When the bell rang, what do you think of this weekend? What did you do this weekend, Henry? No one calls me that, Fitch finally said, jaw twitching as they gathered their books. He'd answered all her questions as politely as he could, but if she called him Henry one more time, he wasn't sure what would happen. I know, said Amanda. She smiled. I just like calling you Henry. Vern stifled laughter as he navigated his trapper keeper into his note backpack. Then he opened his mouth. Do you have any nicknames, Amanda? Vern asked. Amanda raised her eye. Me? Oh, sometimes my dad calls me Mandy. Vern swatted Fitch's arm. Mandy and Henry, he said. It almost rhymes. A perfect spot for Penny. By the time Mrs. Salonga's third period class rolled around, Cash had signatures from most of the social elite of Park Middle School. He'd had the answer to the same question again and again. What happened? What happened? And sometimes it hurt when he moved his arm a certain way so someone could sign a particular spot, but it was worth it. He had plenty of signatures, and there was still a perfectly placed spot for Penny. He could not have planned it better. She walked in on cue. He made eye contact, but not too much. He smiled, but not too much. He scratched the tip of his nose the moment he knew her eyes were on him so she'd get a full view of his injury. She gasped and slung her backpack off her shoulder. What happened? Cash shrugged. Act casual. I fell and broke my wrist. Did it hurt? Nah. That was a lie. It still hurt, now and then. But he couldn't really admit that, could he? Penny situated her books. He waited for his plan to unfold. But the seconds inched by and nothing happened. Class would start soon. He needed to do something before she turned her full attention to Mrs. Salonga. Do you want to sign it? He blurted out. He held up the marker, dropped it, and picked it up. My cast, I mean. Oh, sure, Penny smiled. Freckles on her nose crinkled. Cash's belly flipped. Their fingers touched when she took the marker from him. His skin tingled. He leaned forward to bring the cast closer to her, and she reached over the back of the chair to write. The smell of fresh marker drifted in the air. The worst part is I can't take notes, he said. Penny didn't look up. Did you have Mrs. Salonga last year? Maybe you can use your old notes. Cash cleared his throat. His neck warmed. Oh, he said. No, I had Mr. Duncan. Just a thought. She snapped and capped back on and said, voila. Cash looked down. He saw the signature right away, exactly the way he wanted it. A loopy single eye dotted with a heart. It was upside down from his vantage point, but yes, there it was. Penny L/S Charlie. Cash wasn't fluent in romantic middle school shorthand, but he knew what LS meant. Penny loves Charlie. Penny loves Charlie? Right there on his arm. Charlie who? Cash asked, hoping his voice wasn't laced with disappointment or even worse, jealousy. Charlie Gowan, she said matter-of-factly. He's in 8th grade. Do you know him? Charlie Gowan. Charlie Gowan. Charlie Gowan. The face came into view. Brown hair, honor student. They'd never had any classes together, of course. Charlie Gowan was a smart kid, and he was Cash Nelson Thomas, the boy who failed 7th grade. Yeah, Cash said, I think so. The tardy bell rang. Penny turned around. The smell of her shampoo wafted up into Cash's nose. He sat back. Maybe you can use your old notes. She knew he flunked. Of course she knew. What other kid at Park Middle School was in the same grade as his younger brother and sister? And now she loved Charlie Gowan. Would Charlie have saved space on his cast for her? Cash averted his eyes from Penny's hair. He wouldn't look. If she wanted to go around with some honor student, so be it. What did he care? He laughed it up with Rachel Hill just that morning in the hall, and she was the most popular girl in school. He didn't need Penny and her stupid honors boyfriend. If she liked smart guys, that was her business. School was stupid anyway. Mrs. Salonga had them on imaginary cruise going to space. For what purpose? None of them were ever going to space. What was the point? He cradled his arm closer as Mrs. Salonga wrote Halley's Comet on the chalkboard. Seriously, what was the point of any of it?